Hello everybody, my name is Boulevard and welcome to another episode of Tournament Tactician, where I am going to try to help you prepare for this week's upcoming tournaments. There are going to be two big ones happening, the Online League Series and the LOR Discord Tournament. The main difference between them is really just the pricing. I'll have a link to the signups for both of those in the description, so check out either one. The OLS is cash pricing, and then the LOR Discord one is like Matcherino cash, which is probably going to be a very small amount, and then the first prize is like a $9.90 in-game board that you can pick from, and then like emotes for 7th and 8th, like kind of a scaling prize pool that way. So whichever pricing sounds more appealing to you, whichever one, like maybe you want the less competitive one, I don't really know, I don't really care. Both of them will be in the thing below, but because nothing really changed meta-wise from last week to this week, we're going to take some time looking at my Twitter account. Because if you'll remember from last week's Tournament Tactician, I had pointed out that there were 4 tier 1 decks that I felt like, and it was TF Fizz, Shen Fiora, Lissandra, and Aphelios. So based on what we saw from Duels of Shurima, right on the money on that one. Granted, this was a card lock tournament, not riot lock, and as Cephalopod pointed out in the comments, he felt like this was one of the tournament formats that is the least restrictive in terms of still being able to run this tier 1 lineup, and one of the most restrictive in running counter to that lineup. So this weekend we've got 2 riot lock tournaments that we're going to be able to look at that I had mentioned earlier, so maybe we'll see a shift in things. I definitely think that this was like a disgustingly high representation of both Shen Fiora and TF Fizz. My baseline for like what is acceptable, because I've been following tournaments for our Legends of Runeterra for a long time, if something is consistently performing in that it is constantly more than half of the top 16, that's a bit of a problem. We have seen metas where the highest represented deck was like 4 or 5 of the top 16. So I definitely think that we can like kind of get back to that. And we'll have to see what comes out this weekend in terms of actual counters, because I do think that Overwhelm, and as we saw, Overwhelm was sort of the 5th most popular deck, the only one not being a one of. I do think that Overwhelm is something that players are really looking towards, and just aggro in general, to try and beat out these TF Fizz lineups and things like that. And I'm actually a little curious if we see a similar lineup run this weekend where you just cut TF Fizz. You play Shen Fiora, you play like Twisted Fate Aphelios, and you play Lissandra, because that's probably going to have a little bit of a better matchup against the anti-TF Fizz lineups, while really not sacrificing that much in terms of power. Especially because you would expect that the TF Fizz is going to get banned against pretty much every non-TF Fizz counter lineup, and then you run into a similar lineup, you just ban the TF Fizz. Overall, I think that like there is a way for players to adapt now, knowing that this is like hard locked in on being the lineup, but there's also a way for those players to adapt to that lineup being adapted to. It's kind of like that next level thinking. So we'll see how things shake out this week. We still have, obviously, next weekend will also still be in the same patch, so we'll kind of be able to track how everything plays out, because I am kind of interested to see what's going to be on top this weekend. I would expect that for the most part, it's still going to be 3 of these 4 decks, just absolutely dominating everything, but only time will tell. And I am casting the Online League Series this weekend. That's going to be at twitch.tv/shitjustworks, as you can always find me casting pretty much every weekend for about the last year at this point. And this is just kind of a refresher in case you wanted to look at the tier list again. Shen Fiora still absolutely dominating. Really not much changing about this list. TF is Mind Meld. Really nothing has changed again. TF Aphelios, or just Aphelios in general, be it the Invoke, the Slow Nightfall, the Boxtopus, the Twisted Fate, whichever version of Temple Aphelios you're looking to run, they all function similarly enough that I've lumped them all into one category. And then, of course, the Watcher Control. Most players have been going for this Turbo Watcher Matron version, so that's the one that you're most likely to see. Of the 7 that we saw on the top of Duels of Shurima, 4 of them were the Turbo Watcher. 3 of them were just the sort of more traditional TLC with It That Stares, Commander Ladros, and a couple copies of Atrocity. The Draculorn Inquisitor version has pretty much fallen off at this point, as we kind of expected it to. I think I mentioned early on that Draculorn Inquisitor was my favorite. I didn't think it was the best. I just really like Draculorn Inquisitor as a card. It's not very good, and I do think that like Turbo Watcher is the way to go if you're going to run this list. That's kind of what I've been playing on ladder. And then Tier 2, Tier 3, nothing else has really shifted. Some strategies that you could come in with this weekend, I had mentioned looking to counter out the TF Fizz by going like full aggro on them, just smorking them down with like Overwhelm, Spider aggro, Discard aggro, something along those lines. Something else that you could look to do is actually pick on the Shen Fiora, because that is another deck that is showing a lot of prominence, and I think that an anti-Shen Fiora lineup that is banning TF Fizz, not the worst thing in the world, and that'd look like Draven Ezreal, Starspring, and another deck that I can't really think of off the top of my head. If that's the route that you're looking to go, I would imagine you have a better idea of what that kind of lineup is going to look like than I actually do. But yeah, aside from that, really not much has changed. As I had mentioned, this is a pretty stagnant meta. We're here for a couple more weeks. We're going to have to bear with it. Speaking of that, Now, if you were looking for more analysis on this is kind of where the tournament analysis is going to end. If you want, you can check out last week's episode of Tournament Tactician, where I really set up the tier list as it is now and explain it a little bit more in depth. But as I had mentioned, because nothing changed between last week and this week, I don't really just kind of want to repeat myself. So instead, we're going to talk about the Boulevard Book, as some people called it. So if you haven't seen this tweet, it kind of made the rounds. It was on a couple of Reddit threads. Ruben and Umbridge both responded to it. Swim spent a little bit of his stream talking about it. It was a topic of discussion on both Runeterra Radio and the Twin Suns podcast. And essentially what I was saying is that I wish that Runeterra would go back to the old balance schedule of once per month or even once every 2 weeks. And I know that everybody was saying like, oh, it was never every 2 weeks. It was always once a month. And I pointed out that actually for the first 2 months of Targon, we were getting balance patches every single 2 weeks. Like, that was just what was happening. You can go and look at the dates posted. You can look at the patches. They're still on the website. Like, that's not hidden information. For 2 months of Targon, we were having balance patches every 14 days. And I saw some takes against this that I liked and some that I didn't like. Probably the worst one was like, oh, you were told that this was going to happen, so you can't be mad about it. Just dumb. And one of the good ones was like, hey, the casual player base doesn't really like it when, they play the game and then they come back, they put it down, they come back a month later and like the one deck that they had is like nerfed and now they have to grind for a new deck, which I do have a couple of points against. I don't know how much I want to do like a discussion on this, but my main thing is, one, League of Legends. I played League of Legends for a long time. Now, it's been a while since I had to grind to unlock a champion, but when I grinded to unlock champions way back when, like, you had to buy them with influence points, and I don't remember how long it took me to unlock any given champion. It was days, weeks, I don't remember. But if I, like, bought that champion, and then I either didn't like that champion, or they got nerfed immediately, like, I just grinded for the next champion. It was kind of whatever to me. I didn't really think too much about it, and I would imagine that it definitely takes a lot less time to get a new deck in Runeterra than it did to get, like, a 6300 IP champion back in League of Legends. So that just kind of is what it is. Like, I was fine with that. Maybe that's just the kind of player I am. It is what it is. Another thing that I wanted to point out is that I don't really like... what's the best way to put this? The lens at which I look through Legends of Runeterra is the lens in which I exist in this space. I am a caster. I care about tournaments, and I care about high-level tournaments. The content that I make is not for casual players. It doesn't appeal to them. It doesn't have anything to do with them. I am very separated from the casual player base in terms of like the way that I look at Legends of Runeterra and the things that I want. I want Legends of Runeterra to be balanced like a video game. I think that digital card games are broken much more akin to the pace of a video game than they are a card game. Magic the Gathering in 1997 didn't have 10,000 games of Magic to look at every day in order to balance things, whereas Legends of Runeterra does. So I really like that aggressive balancing, and I also think that your game should be fun for everybody, but I would much rather it be fun for the people that are playing every day than the people that are playing 10 times a year. Is that rude to the casuals? A little bit. Do I care? Yes, it's not like I want to completely alienate the casual player base. We wouldn't have a game without them, but they're not the people that I like interact with on a daily basis, right? Like, that's not where my content's focused. That's not where I, in the Legends of Runeterra space, am focused. I'm much more focused on the competitive scene. It's very obvious. So when I talk about what I want out of balance, I am focused solely on the competitive scene because that's where I exist. And I'm allowed to do that because I don't work for Riot Games. I don't have to worry about how they're actually going to do this. All I can say is, hey, this is where I exist and this is what I want. And when something like this happens, when like this tweet blows up, not everybody that's interacting with it understands that. Like, because I am a caster, I only care about the competitive circuit. So like whenever I talk about changes, I'm talking like solely from competitive standpoints. When I bring up balanced metas and like stats and stuff like that, I bring them up from tournament top cuts. I don't really look at ladder that often. And I've gotten caught off guard by that on cast before. I've talked about decks and people are like, oh, this is from ladder. I'm like, I don't look at ladder. And people that have been following me for a while know something like that. But when something like, randoms get their hands on it, they don't understand that. Like, that's totally understandable. You shouldn't probably know who I am. I'm still very small time in this. But yeah, I just kind of wanted to bring it up because it felt weird not to talk about it. I didn't want to make like a separate video for it because I've been talking for like 4 minutes and that's really all I had to say. But yeah. That is the Boulevard Book. You can read through it. Basically, I just go through like the balance history of Legends of Runeterra. Nobody has read through this like when they were on stream or like in the Reddit thread. It's fine. I get it. I was just kind of popping off. I saw this Twin Suns podcast thing. It like set me off. I actually didn't sleep that well the night that I made this just because I was worried that like Mogwai was going to see it, not like what I said, and then I was going to wake up to like a dog pile of Mogwai followers, or even worse, because I do have a working relationship with Riot Games, I was an analyst for their most recent seasonal tournament. I was worried that Riot was going to like hate the way that I formatted this and be like, we're not working with this guy anymore. So like, I definitely was a little bit heated when I wrote this, and I was a little bit scared to post it just because like I knew that I was heated when I wrote this, but I also didn't want to like sit on it, right, and like let it stew. I just wanted to get it out there, and it definitely resonated with people more than I probably expected it to. But I just kind of wanted to like touch on it. It felt weird not to touch on it, based on how much community reaction was put into it over the last couple of days. So yeah, that is going to do it for Tournament Tactician this week. My name is Boulevard. Thank you so much for watching. As always, good luck in your tournaments. As a reminder, both of the tournaments you can sign up for this weekend will be in the description below, as well as a link to the tournament tier list. That is in my link tree. I don't know why I was posting the tournament tier list as well as my link tree. The tournament tier list is and always has been in my link tree, so click on that. It's not a virus, I promise. It's just a list of my socials. You can follow me on Twitter from the BLVD, as you saw there. Yeah, good luck in your tournaments, guys. It's going to be a rough couple weeks. I appreciate everybody that is like still playing in this event, or in these events during these trying times, as well as coming out to watch them, because me and SJW, we're going to do our absolute best to like make sure that a very stale meta is still entertaining for you. We're working on some stuff. I don't know how much of it is actually going to pan out. I don't know how much of it's going to be good, but we are actively working to make sure that you guys are still entertained if you do want to come out and watch these tournaments. I appreciate it so much. Thank you so much for watching.